And welcome to today's meeting of Taunton Town Council and the Finance and Governance Committee. We'll make a start with the meeting now. Do we have any apologies from anyone tonight, Ollie?
No, Chair.
No, I've got an apology just from Councillor Packy Hughes, who was going to attend to give an update of both personnel and grants. But if we'll take the papers and go through it from that point of view because she's poorly. I am hoping that Councillor Nick O'Donnell comes so that he can update on the aspect of the budgets in the operations and assets. But if not, we've got Bev to give us an update as Vice Chair of that committee. So hopefully he turns up before we get there. Do we have any declarations of interest that we need to note at agenda item 2 that aren't disclosed already? No? Oh, sorry, Karen.
This is an item that affects Friends of French, where I do volunteer for Friends of French, where I'm a humble volunteer.
That's really, I believe, in your declarations anyway.
Oh, is it? Oh, well, I'll stop saying that every time then.
I think. If not, we'll double check, but yeah, we'll put it through just so that then I guess you can make that also at the point as well, so it's made clear to members of the public that we all hold many different hats as councillors. So on to agenda item number 3, which is to approve, and then I can sign, hopefully subject to that approval, the minutes of the meeting that took place on the 21st of October. Has anyone got any questions or comments on those minutes that start on page 3 of our agenda tonight? Anything they want to raise? What I will need is a proposer for those minutes so I can sign them. So I've got Councillor Paul Tews. Are you happy to second them?
Yes.
Just make a note. I've got to sign every page, haven't I? No? Yes. Perfect. I will do that as the meeting progresses. So what we'll do now is we'll move on to the forward plan at agenda item number 4. And let's just have a look at what we've got coming up over the next couple of meetings. It looks like January's got quite a few updates as well to policies all the way through into March. And am I right in saying that we'll get the next ones once we've set the dates for those meetings? Yep.
For the next committee.
So the next committees when we go through the annual cycle. Has anyone got any questions for what's coming forward in January and March? Anything that they would like to be discussed at all? Okay. I'm happy to propose in notes the forward plan. Has anyone got a seconder? Okay. All those in favour of the forward plan as noted? Perfect. So we'll move on to agenda item number 5, which is looking at our current financial position for the 25-26 budget. And so we've got the financial update as of the 1st of December. Over to you, Gail, if there's anything that you want to highlight in particular.
Thank you, Chair. Attached is the income and expenditure report and the balance sheet, which also includes the earmark reserve at the 30th of November. There are no major variances, although we have made some violence. Essentially, what has happened during this year is it's been very difficult to budget against pavilion maintenance, play area maintenance, ground maintenance, PC maintenance, compliance checks, etc. By park or by asset. So what we've done now is move all of the budget, all of those areas into one overarching budget, and we are then firing against invoices paid on those specific areas on a quarterly basis. So this report requests that members confirm that they're happy with us continuing to do that until we have specific plans in place so that we can budget against those. Other than that, there are no major issues. As attached, it was the violence that we've made and also the payments that have been made for the last 2 months, or that would be October and November.
Perfect. So what we'll do, like I think I've done in previous committees, is go through each section so that we don't take Gail on a random discussion around multiple different elements of this paper. Just hopefully easy if we go through each of them together. So if we look at Appendix 1, that's the income and expenditure report up to the end of month 8, so the end of November. This obviously gives a very detailed income, what we've got coming in, what we've got going out. Has anyone got any questions on Appendix 1? Anything that they want to clarify? Perfect. I always just like to note that at parish council level, how transparent we are when it comes to what we spend. I know we'll go on to that in a second when we talk about actually what we're spending each month, but it truly does delve into the details. So for people who want to pay in interest when we've got a £6 million budget, I'm always in awe of the level of detail that we can and do give out. So appendix number 2 is the balance sheet, which includes the current earmarked reserves. Any questions on the balance sheet appendix 2? No? You're all very quiet tonight. Even you are quiet tonight with the questions.
Time.
All good. So we'll move on to appendix number 3, which is the environments that we've done. This is clearly quite a lot, but you've explained the reasons for that. Rob, do you have a question on any of the environments that we've been doing at all? No? You have any other questions from the rest of the committee at all on how we're moving money around or anything that they want to highlight? We are going to have a quick meeting tonight. So I'm just going through all the papers here.
I think Councillor Twos is.
I'm not sure when to. I'm not sure. My question was around the main paper, Chair, the report, and I think it's covered. But I just wanted to be sure. I agree totally with the decision to put all the pavilions under one budget line. But will members? I think it says in 2.5 we will be able to see what money is spent on which specific pavilion. Thank you. Just wanted to double check.
The payments for the expenditure will go to the specific budget lines, and then on a quarterly basis we'll cover the budget from the pot essentially.
Thanks for
that. So appendix item number 4 is literally the transactions. It's like reading a bank statement of what we have spent, whether that's ranging from our salary bill all the way through to £24.36. It looks like on some at Eureka. So any questions on our payments over the last 2 months at all? Well,
yes, thank you, Chair. Just one point that I've asked, so I just wanted to make it clear, and it might affect our Councillor Twos as well. We did at a previous meeting agree that we wouldn't be charging a fee for the gate access to the Victoria Park along Priory Bridge Road. We have made some refunds to that, people that have paid. There's a lot of houses there that haven't had a refund because they haven't come forward with their bank details.
That's correct.
So that it is can be refunded, but I just wanted to make that
and also to say that this is only payments for the last 2 months, so we have been doing that since I think Council agreed for us to do that back in February or March time.
yes.
So we have been doing it as we have the detail.
Paul?
I was just going to say I do know the households quite well for various reasons. Do you know if you want me to nip down and prompt people to do that? I'm quite happy to do so.
Thank you. Yes, well, I'll speak to the team and find out if we're having problems with anybody specific.
And Ed?
Yes, there are several payments to Somerset Council. Can they be confirmed what they are?
I'll have to come back to you on that, I believe. Without looking at each of the individual invoices, I don't think I could tell you. Apart from the ones that are for the pension. Which are normally paid on about the 13th of the month. There's one there, 43,000.
Any other questions on appendix 4? If we go back to the main element of the report, because we have got the recommendation which Councillor Tews has highlighted around just those changes that we're looking to do with those overarching cost codes. That is a recommendation at 10.2. Anyone got any further questions on the paper at all on that element? I personally fully support that so that we can see how those work. I would like to see that detail. I think you said quarterly basis, wasn't it? So that we can then see, because I know that we want to do more around our pavilions, and we want to know whether or not we want to do, you know, is it worth refurbishing if we want to build new ones, as an example. So it's good that we can see kind of what those kind of spends are. I need a proposer. Bev is happy to propose. I need a seconder. Ed is seconding. All those in favour of the recommendations as printed at 10. So we'll move on to the next item in our report this evening, which is now looking forward, the budget for 26-27. And this has gone through all the different committees, which is why we've got some of the chairs here with us this evening. So the way that I'd like us to look at this is that each chair talks about their element of the budget so that we can then see it from their perspective, while we oversee it from a, I guess, financial and governance point of view before it then moves on to full council in January. But what I'll do first, Gail, shall I hand over to yourself if you've got any particular highlights and any changes or news that have come in recent days to then highlight anything to us?
Yeah, I've given out a paper which is actually the revised section 2.5 of the report. The tax base there was showing the increases based on the tax base for 25-26. The paper that you've got in, which we've received in the last couple of days, is the tax base for 26-27. Tax base has gone up by 2.06%. So the new figures that I provided show the increase of 1.61 based on the preset that was proposed of 6,815,406. However, you will also notice that in that paper, there's a suggestion that the committee might wish to increase the preset further by another 140,194. Bringing the preset up to 6,955,600, and that would be a 3.7% increase on all the band charges, which is in line with current inflation rates. That additional funding could be added to the play park refurbishment funds on the basis that we may not be able to obtain grants for all of the money that we require.
So I think what I'd like to do in relation to how we kind of go through the budget, because it's really important that we make sure that we scrutinise this and listen to what the chairs have said about what happened at their committees. It would be really interesting to take questions on this new report that's come forward, and the kind of decision that we're looking to make in relation to this. Because I think if I've understood correctly, Gail, when we did the paper, we were making an assumption on what we thought our tax base was going to, but yeah, last year, based on last year's. We've now been given those figures by Somerset Council, because the way that it's made up is looking at how many houses have been built that add to the tax base and changes in that regard. Actually, we haven't seen as many houses built across the last year to add to that tax base. I think it's only under 200 that have been built within the Taunton Town Council area. So actually that increase is a little bit less than what we've got in the report. However, that would bring an increase at 1.6%. However, inflation is at 3.7%. So I'm personally of the view that we should always look to match inflation, because things cost money, everything goes up in line with inflation within reason, and therefore it allows us to ensure that we're staying static and not going down, and that things cost them differently. And then if I've read the paper that you've handed out in advance, we're looking at approximately for 75% of our Taunton population, because that's the people who are in band A to C, I want to say, less than 2 pints of milk a month, less than the cost of 2 pints of milk a month, as an increase to us as a town council. And actually, by putting it up to inflation, we have some money that we can play with in the right way and play parts. I didn't actually plan that, by the way, when I said that. If we can put into play parts that actually allows usage by a lot of different types of the population in our parks and open spaces, because it's used by a whole range of demographics. So for me, that seems a sensible thing to do, but I'll open it up to the floor now I've had my little word. So any comments or questions on that kind of what we're looking at from a proposal point of view? Cool.
I agree, Chair, with your comments around matching inflation, and I with the second one, the one that's in the paper, this, you know, the 3.7, I'm comfortable with that generally myself.
I think one of the things to highlight is also that for those that struggle, well, the scheme that Somerset Council runs in the CTRS scheme, that allows those that have got struggles that they get support in helping with their council tax. There may be pros and cons about that scheme. However, for those that it is eligible for, they can use that or the emergency hardship fund to get support. So I just wanted to make it clear, because there are some people that, you know, the cost of 2 pints of milk is a stretch, but there is hopefully some support there as well. Caro.
Yeah, I think overall, I think we have to, otherwise we'll just be, we can't stand still. This will enable us to kind of meet our obligations and the things that residents have said that they wanted. 3.7, so I think I'm comfortable with that. I would just warn people though that there are a lot of people, severely disabled people, struggling with council tax, and the Somerset exceptional hardship scheme as yet does not actually provide an accessible, effective mitigation. And there'll be more discussion on this tomorrow at Somerset Full Council, because I will be making sure that there is. So I think we need to be mindful of that, and we may need to raise it at a future meeting, because this affects our residents. A number of our residents are most vulnerable residents who before, because they were severely disabled, people of working age I'm talking about, they couldn't work, they had no prospect of working. They are really suffering right now, but we need to maybe put pressure on Somerset Council if they don't sort something out tomorrow on that, because there are residents and they are really, really suffering. But I think in the grand scheme of things, yes, you know, we've gone for the minimum level of increase. We have to meet our costs are going up because of the inflation rate. So yeah, I think I'm comfortable with that. One thing I would say about a sort of a request for next year. So at the moment we do this zero-based budgeting, but it's very, and it's within the sort of directorates. But if you're a member of a committee, you only get those figures, you get a briefing an hour before the committee. And I'm thinking, can there be a way which is a bit more participative, so that actually members are involved in building the budget, rather than just seeing it an hour beforehand? I think there needs to be a bit more sort of strategic involvement and a bit more participation in actually making those decisions, as it were. Luckily, you know, we're presented with budgets that we're more or less happy with. There's a bit of discussion, but we're more or less happy with it. But I would feel a lot more comfortable if there was a bit more prior involvement, because we do it on committee, don't we? It's basically lines up. The way it lines up is it goes by a committee, the main two being community in place and ops and assets essentially. But I just would, can we try and do a bit more of that? Then if we've had more involvement, we can explain it better as well to our residents, and it'd be great. I've said this before, I know we've got some graphics, haven't we, that we're going to be using, but we really do need to break it down and make people understand this is what stuff costs, this is why you need staff to do X, Y and Z, these are the constraints, etc., and really make it much more intelligible to people.
I think to come back on that, Caro, my understanding is that the budget comes from our corporate priorities and our corporate plans, where we've set our kind of strategy over 4 years built on member goals. I'm not saying that we shouldn't look at your idea, because it's always valid to see what else we could do. Then the chairs of the committees come forward and go through all the different ideas that have both come from the corporate priorities and what staff members have said that they need, and they need to be challenged, because I would imagine, Gail, that all the ideas that come forward don't match up to the budget that we've currently got.
Absolutely.
And so then that gets prioritised with then the chairs who chair the committees, and then it filters down. But I guess it's something for us to take away about what more member involvement there could be and how that goes to the wider audience. Or maybe it needs to be not just an hour before the committees, and that would probably maybe, I don't know, something for us all to think about maybe as we go through the next year's budget, the year after, whatever, yeah. So, any more questions on this aspect in relation to our tax base and what we're setting out, Bev?
Chair, not so much a question, but just to say I also support this this as well, and I just think it's good, and you know, and it's the idea that we could use that additional funding to potentially add to the play park refurbishment project. I think it's a useful idea too. Thank you.
Go for it, Harry.
Just explain to me the bit about the extra money again. So we're deliberately just kind of rounding things up, as it were. And are we making a specific recommendation about what that extra money should go on? What if our grants are very successful? Are we tying our hands a bit by saying, oh, we have to spend it on X if we manage to get?
My understanding is you can do environments mid-year, but that would be a full
Okay.
decision. But
Yeah. If we were to add that to the budget, that would go to an earmark reserve for the play parks. If we get those grants, then we would be with council decision, that money could be moved to capital projects or something.
I think it's really important on the play parks that we took that decision last week to spend £1.2 million. And actually, I think the discussion we had, wasn't it, was that if we could do it quicker, wouldn't that be a great thing for us to do? So hopefully this just allows us to pump prime the project with some further funds. But what we'll do now, if okay, I'm going to work my way through the committees. So hopefully you're all ready, those that chair, to talk through your budgets. Tell me some of the highlights of what you are looking to do with the budget next year. And we can then maybe, if there's any questions from other FinGov members, just ask those. So, Bev, do you want to go first? But Nick's come to save the day. He's here for Ops and Assets. So you're okay. So do you want to talk to us about communities and place budget? Anything that was like highlighted or what happened at the meeting?
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. Yes, so the community in place budget, we've this has been discussed at length through community in place committee. I think we had quite a good discussion, didn't we, through that particular one. I think members will note we've got quite a few moving on to 26-27, we've got quite a few budget lines that we've actually reduced because we found that we weren't actually spending all of that budget from last year. So we've reduced the figures. For example, we've I highlighted these and I can't see them now. Yes, I think it was the town centre events budget. We reduced that by £5,000 going forwards. Another thing to note is that the floral decorations, the hanging baskets, we decided as committee to move those over to the operations assets team purely for the fact that it would reduce the costs because we were actually paying extra to get them watered. But obviously the ops and assets team have actually got their own watering bowsers now, so they can actually water them. So we made that decision to pass them over. So again, that was a savings on that one. Members will also note we've got an uplift in the street marshal service, and that again came through committee because we looked at actually doing a 3-year tender for that one because that would work out cheaper as well. So all in all, I think, and we've also we increased the Christmas parking incentive slightly to cover any potential uplifts in parking fees going forwards. And we've also we've got the visitor centre service level agreement money coming in because that's a new addition for 26-27 going on forwards. I think overall, I think as communities in place, we did quite well. We've done well with us. We've before the committee meetings had discussions with our manager, with Craig Stone. We've discussed them, we've talked about them, and then we've brought them to committee, and then we've had at length discussions around that. Happy to take any questions. Thanks, Chair.
Any questions, or if not, I've got some, or just some key highlights. Any questions about community and place budget? Anything anyone wants to highlight? I think for me, there's some real positives in here, Bev. So if we take the fact we're going to do the Christmas lighting, again, we've had some really great comments around what that looks like for us as a town council, and the event that took place. We've got the street marshals, that again has some really good positive comments. The Sunday concerts as an example in over the summer, and that is an entertainment within Belvedere Park. The visitor centre, where we're now taking on that, so that shows within your area. Along with that, I've got the CCTV now showing as a line where we're obviously investing in that. So I think it's a really positive that we are continuing to build on the good work in those areas and keeping those budgets, because we know that that's what residents value. Any other questions on that one before I go to Nick to look at ops and assets? Over to Bev.
Yeah, sorry, I've just come back on that. Thank you for that. And it's also just to note that there is a slight uplift in the salary costs going forwards. But again, because I think along with ops and assets, I think we are one of the busiest areas of the town council, and we need to have staff in place to actually cover those areas. And you're right with the Christmas lights, we've increased the budget on that one, so we can extend the Christmas lighting down into other areas moving forwards, which is good news. Thank you.
Nick, over to you for your budget and what took place at your committee today.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We had a very long discussion an hour before. I think some of the headlines is, well, I suppose it's been one of the headlines, and there's no service growth in our budget. So we're pretty much matching what we were spending last year. We've got a bit of a focus on the play parks, as you've mentioned already. We did commit an extra 20,000 to add to our normal £150,000 pot, which we can then put in, which gives us a very good budget for the play parks. In terms of salaries, we've split the salary structure between assets and open spaces, so we've got more accountability there. We wanted to spend money on various things on the open spaces, like sports pitch improvements. I think we're really trying to beef those up, and also pavilion upgrades. And there was something else that just occurred to me as I was sitting down, and I can't remember what it was. So if anyone's got questions, if I can remember it while I'm thinking. But basically, I think the big thing is toilets. Yes, we've reduced the amount we're spending on toilets next year, so we've not focused on the toilets. We have put aside £200,000, so there might be a case of just improving one set of toilets. But what we do have is £100,000 in an earmarked reserved that, should we need to go to it, we can. Yeah.
Don't want to upset me when it comes to toilets, do you?
No, but what I'm really looking forward to is improving the parks. I mean, there's a lot of things going on which kind of comes under assets. They've got a lot of working project groups going on, like the street traders, but that's being managed by the major project working group, and they just report back to us. Yes, so that is largely that from operations and assets. No real net growth in our spending, splitting it between operations and assets and having two salary structures there, increasing 20,000 for our play parks next year, so we can really, as we say, try and speed it up. If we can do it quicker than 5 years, then I think everyone will welcome that. And the 12 parks of Taunton, to give it a festive ring. So yes, any questions?
Any questions?
I'm still thinking what the last thing was I thought of as I sat down.
Any questions, Paul?
Thanks, Nick, for the update. I'm not sure if it's for you or general, but it might be encompassed in what you were talking about for the parks. But there's a line specifically around Green Flag Award, and that it's 9,000 last year. It's gone up. It's doubled to 18,000. I was just trying to get my head around specifically why we think that line around the green flag thing is doubled.
Yes, thank you. That was the thing that I remembered as I sat down. So we have decided as operations and assets to increase the number of green flag parks we have. So we're going to add another 3. And no, off the top of my head, I can't remember which ones they are, but that's why there's been an increase in that budget there. It was the green flags, yes. So next year we are intending to make 3 more of our parks. Goodlands is one, Taunton Green, and there's one of the others. So that's why there's an increase in that line. But that would be good. More green flag status parks. Yeah.
Any other other questions? Other members? Mine's more of a comment again, is just some of the positives around that ops and assets budget, like that we continue to do. So, you know, we are still going to do toilets, but ultimately we also maintain toilets within your budget. So, you know, looking after what we do have as well as upgrading them. I think I saw that the speed indicator devices, whilst we're not purchasing new ones, we will still be out there putting them up and monitoring speeds within different areas. And the fact that we're also thinking differently within ops and assets, just looking at Marcus reminded me, you know, where we're working with the community payback scheme, working within our open spaces. So sometimes we do things, and I know this is about the budget of money, but ultimately it's around making the area look better. And we spend a lot of money just taking care of those 12 parks, regardless of putting in, you know, that £1.2 million equipment. So for me, it's all about doing things and doing things well, and that comes across within that budget. So we haven't got Amber here to do both personnel or grants, but what we can do is take a look at grants within the budget just to see if there's anything that anyone wants to ask or add of that, and we'll probably call on the staff team to help if there's any questions that we have. I think ultimately, if I've understood our budget correctly, we're carrying on with our grant giving programme and looking at it. We've done the SLA as well with the brew house separately, so that's now built into our budget. So we're supporting arts and culture. But any questions on the grant aspect within our budget? Anyone? Rob?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say most of the grants committee is actually on this committee as well, with Caro, Ed and Paul and myself, which is good. So we're all well aware of what's gone on at the last grants meeting. The grants budget hasn't actually gone up at all. And just make another point, there is another 0.9 on the agenda this evening for the new grants policy. So some of the levels under the different headings, such as the sponsored community grants and venue grants, have changed a tad. And some funds we've moved to community in place, because that would be a more appropriate place for that to go through. Just wanted to say that, really, Chair. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on grants?
I'll ask because I don't know. Sorry, I won't keep us. But what's slow the flow? And it's attributed to the community centre. No idea what that is. It's something to do with flooding. It's a very small amount scale. I'm not sure it's going to be.
I believe that was something to do with a grant from Wessex Water.
Okay.
That was done through community in place.
I think it, swales.
And one thing oh, sorry, Nick, come in.
Yeah, also, I think Federica Caro just Councillor has put that's a bit of swales, is it? I think.
Yeah, I don't know what page you're on. Sorry, there's so many pages. I've lost the plot. What page I'm on? I was looking ahead to the next item. Sorry, but there is a thing. We're doing a project with Wessex Water, and it's like a watermark town. And there's a number of projects within that, and one of them is about basically stopping floodwater, you know, going all over Taunton, and that involves creating rain gardens and swales. And that was debated at the last. Oh, is it up tonight? It's up tonight, isn't it? Or is it not? One of them is.
Yeah.
One of them is.
Is that the
I don't know if that was what slow the flow sounds to me. That's what it relates to.
Part of it, I think. Yeah.
Any other questions? On that, I think the only thing I draw our attention to, and I've had a word with myself as part of this, so it's not quite grants, but it's the ward member initiative scheme. And just to have a look and see how we can look to support those within our area. I'll hold my hands up, I haven't spent any of it yet, or asked for it to be spent, because I'm kind of trying to pull different strands together. Donna advised us earlier, we have got like Stephen and stuff that can support us as ward members if we want a little bit of help with getting those across the line. But just where, you know, for me, I would never want us to lose doing it, but it's just about reminding people and reaching out to different groups. I'm wondering if we could do another social media thing by the council to promote it so that it gets other organisations, because that way it reaches different people again to think, and it might be good to give some examples of different organisations that could maybe come forward. So finally on to personnel. I actually didn't chair this meeting, so I don't know if you want to come in, Rob, as an it's Barbara, isn't it? It's vice chair of personnel. But what I think, Donna, did you want to come in just from a point of view from a staffing? I know from experience that we've had before that the amount that we spend when it comes to staffing, that is to do the things that we've asked to happen. And actually, as a council, what we spend on staffing is actually as a percentage lower than other councils of similar sizing on what they then spend against the rest of the budget. But I don't know if you want to come in on anything.
Yeah, no, that's the fine, thank you, Chair. So earlier in the year, we went to the personnel committee with the proposed staffing structure for 25 to finish off the rest of this year, and also for 26-27. There was an increase in staff based on some of the legislation changes, to the increase in the service areas, and for the additional stuff that we've taken on, and which has been agreed at committee and full council. That was all approved and noted at the personnel committee, and within obviously the budget that's been agreed is obviously the costing of staff for the next financial year. So we are currently taking some staff because there was money within this year's budget that we could take them on within this year, and then the additional staff that's required for 26-27 to be able to carry out the projects and initiatives that the council has agreed. Yes, you know, we are still lower than other town councils around. There is an increase in staffing numbers across the service areas. They are predominantly more of the outward facing staff, so staff on the ground who's delivering the frontline issues. You know, parks and open spaces is one of the bigger areas. We've divided up the operations and assets committee and team, so therefore we've got a dedicated operations team and a dedicated assets team going forward for 26-27 as well. Within the staffing budget, there has been a obviously we have the annual pay award, so it's been budgeted for 3.8%. At the moment, but obviously this is something that is agreed nationally and it's outside of the town council's control. But obviously we've had to put something in, and also for the distribution of staff incremental spinal column points as well, for people moving up the scale for the time that they're here. So all of that has been budgeted into the personnel costs, which is what all went through to the personnel committee last month.
I have a quick question just on the National Pay Award, and we've put in the 3.8, so it's roughly inflation, isn't it? So when will we hear? So we heard on this year's yet, because normally it's in November following the April. Have we heard for 25-26? Okay.
And we heard this year in July, which was very unusual.
Oh yeah, very early.
But yes, for next year we won't know, but they put in for a 10% increase or £3,000 per person, whichever is the higher.
That is their first ask.
Yes.
But in comparison to what was the award that was awarded this year?
What did they ask for originally?
I'm not sure.
I would think it's round about the same.
Okay,
as their first ask, but yeah, what was agreed was the 3.2%. So we've put in an allowance of 3.8%. If there is any fluctuation, we have a staff in EMR, which we keep just in case we need to obviously top anything up.
Any questions on personnel, Bev?
Thank you. Yeah, and I'd just like to sort of echo those initial comments from Councillor Smith-Roberts about the fact that in most parish and town councils, that a significant amount of precept on the budget goes on staffing costs because we need those staff to carry out those jobs. And even at a parish council level, it's the main amount of the cost is the parish clerk, and the parish clerk on the smallest of parish councils, their salary is also set at a national level and increments and spinal points as well. So it's not just us, it's across the whole thing from a tiny parish council right through to large town councils too. Thank you.
Also all the way up to unitary as to what the pay awards and stuff is, isn't it? So it's still done at national level. Any questions on personnel aspects? So we'll go back to just the main report. Is there any other questions on the budget that we want to ask before we Tom?
I've been keeping quiet in the corner. Not so much of a question like you, Chair. I just wanted to observe the fact and just thank everyone around the room who's been involved in the process. So I've known lots of people, either committees as chairs, particularly our officers, who I'm always amazed at how quickly budget setting comes around every year. I suspect they're already thinking about the one that follows. So it's a bit continuous cycle. I'm just really proud of the budget that we've been able to build this year and how we've stayed true to what we said we would do. So a couple of years ago, we had to make the really difficult decision around the increase that we put into our precept, but we always said that was going to be a one-off, and we've been able to stick to that because of how well we've managed the budget through that, and that's particular thanks to just our officers who have helped us on that journey. So I just think this is a really solid budget. It's in line with inflation. There's some amazing things in there. I had family here visiting the town at the weekend who were just so buoyant with how the town felt, and I genuinely believe we're having an impact on that. We're one of many people who are impacting it, but I believe we are. So I just want to thank everyone for all the work that's gone into putting this budget together, and importantly the things it enables us to do, because I think, thank goodness, we're here doing them.
Very positive words there, Tom. So we'll move on if no one's got any further questions. To the recommendations on page 50 is that we've considered the draft consolidated budget as presented, and we'll make the recommendation to full council for the proposed budget for 26-27. I'm happy to propose. You're happy to second. All those in favour? Perfect. That is carried. And that's for. So do I need to?
Put to the paper.
Okay. So what I'll do is I'll add a recommendation on then, shall I, that will the actual precepting amount will go up to by a further 140,000 than what's in the paper to 6,955,600, which is an increase of 5.84%, so that the band charges are increased in line with inflation at 3.7%, and this additional funding could be added to the play park refurbishment project, or it will be added to the play park refurbishment project. So I will propose that as a recommendation. I just need a seconder. Rob, and all those in favour that being added. And now do I need to do it just as a substantive motion, or just?
No, that's fine.
Fine, happy with that?
Happy with that.
Perfect. And so we'll all see each other in January to actually vote that through. So we'll move on to fees and charges, which is agenda item number 7. Just going down to this a second. And Angela, are you presenting this to us?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. While I'm scrolling, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, members. Earlier this year, when you agreed these charges for 25-26, we also you also agreed to undertake a review of fees and charges, just to sort of give us a bit more of a look under the bonnet, so to speak. So the paper and the report in front of you tonight in particular just gives you a quick overview of where things are with fees and charges. The first one was how the facilities have been used during 24-25. And as you can see, the majority of our parks in particular are used for football pitches or football matches, with some park hire. Overall, football remains one of the predominant features that our pitches are hired for. Interestingly, there were no bookings for Staple Grove, Greenway Rec, Hawthorne or Penny Fields, although obviously, as members will know, we are looking at Hawthorne Park as potential for disc golf. In respect of, we were looking to hope to do a better analysis of costs. So obviously, as you know, the fees were the original fees that we adopted, or in many cases adopted from Somerset Council, and we were hoping to look at a better look under the bonnet again of the income and what it's actually costing us to run these facilities. We were only really through our first year of managing these facilities, so to actually try and look at it as a part of partial year figures probably would actually misconstrue the actual full year costs. So the intention is this year is to recommend on members' agreement that we increase by 5% again for 26-27, but 22-26 we will do, and with the first year full figures, we'll do a full reflection of the costs of what it costs us to run these facilities and how we can reflect that back into our fees and charges, if at all. And a report will come back to committee in September 26. In respect to the fee structure, the guidance document, which is attached to Appendix 1, has undergone some updates and changes. All the changes are in red, so hopefully they're relatively straightforward to understand. We have included a lot more bits and pieces within there, although members should be aware that there is an emerging document called the Council's Events Fitness on Council Land Policy, which will be coming from Community in Place. And so the two policies, the fees and charges documents and that policy, should run hand in hand. We've designated the parks in line with the accessibility review, so you now have local, neighbourhood and designation and destination parks. Apologies, it says designation, but it's destination parks. In respect of events, we put 2 additional categories in there so that we can potentially get some very small events in there, or potentially birthday parties or other small events in there. So we've recognised those. With the introduction of street traders, obviously we'll be issuing a permit for street traders, and so therefore the permit fee, we didn't particularly want to confuse the issue. So the permit fee and the admin fee have been combined into a consent fee. That said, that we have also added a caveat, so if there is significant damage, then we will look to chart the hirer to probably pay an additional fee. Discretions remain in place, but what we will be doing from the 1st of April is actually putting in a proper approvals process. So if an organisation approaches us to ask for a fee reduction or to not charge at all, then we will actually be putting that through a proper process where senior members of the strategic leadership team, when I get my words out, will also be agreeing to the reductions in fees or no fees at all. The fitness section's been overhauled completely because obviously the last one I didn't really understand it, and I don't think a lot of people did. So we have created that, and hopefully that will be better. And we've obviously recognised the expansion in the trader and non-trader section as well as, and finally just added some new entries in respect of volleyball pavilions and the cost of lighting the market house. In respect of comms, we are going to make better use of comms, but we're going to do it by seasons. So we're going to try and make it a bit more seasonal. Currently, we just sort of throw a post out every so often, but we're moving forward. Certainly from sort of March onwards, we're going to do them much more seasonally. So in the summer, promote the parks for events and things like that. Obviously in the autumn, things for football or whatever. The only other change I would draw to members' attention is we have had some dialogue with the hot air balloon pilot, and our original suggestion around the fee structure. He did raise some concerns. So we have done some investigation in respect of Bristol and Bath, obviously, who see hot air balloon launches probably more than we do. And we are recommending that we review that fee and actually reduce it to £275 per year for a 12-month licence to operate under our parks. Obviously, there's no discernible understanding of how many times you would launch a balloon, because obviously it's very weather dependent. The other issue I did want to pick up as well was Councillor Ellis did raise some concerns by separate email concerning within the guidance we've put that the consent fee may be charged to friends groups. I've put that in there mainly as a safeguard for the organisation. Obviously we're now in a position, as I said, we will be going through a much more rigorous approval process to to ensure that when we award a discretion, that we actually understand it and we know why we're awarding that discretion in the first place. The only other thing I would say is, in actual fact, is in respect of comms and reporting, is one of the things that we will do is we'll be coming, when we come to committee July 26th, if we can think that far ahead, with our financial resilience updates, we will start reporting more transparently the amount of income we're getting from fees and charges. It's not really out there at the moment, and I do think we need to raise the profile of that. And as part of that reporting, we'll also be reporting on the discretions that we've awarded during the last quarter, so that members can actually see when we are awarding discretions, and that gives us a better chance. So when we get to this point this time next year, we can look back and say, okay, well, we've done that, we've done this. What do we? Is there anything else we want to add or not, as the case may be, to our discretions approach? So I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. I've just got some questions before I pass over to the committee, just to pick up on your element, because I know Councillor Ellis has raised around community groups. I think, if I've understood you correctly, but please correct me, is that we've put in here that there could be a charge, and again, we also want people, when they're hiring our parks, I guess even our friends groups, to go through an approval process, I guess, to make sure that they've got public liability insurance and they've got the right safeguarding measures in place. However, we will have discretion. As an example, I use an example, in the past, it doesn't happen now, but in SWT days, I allowed the Armed Forces Day to have Belvedere Park for free, because it was a free to attend event that had no kind of restriction on who could go, and no one needed to pay to get in, and therefore it was kind of like the council's payback to the community within reason. So I'm just wondering, so in what you're saying, in those events, if a friends group wanted to put something on, they would apply, and it would be at our discretion then if we gave it free, depending on the type of group. It's just not giving a free for all to allow them access all the time without us overseeing in a safe way what's happening in our parks.
Yeah, in the main, yes. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Chair. In the main, the discretions remain as they are. If it's a local voluntary group, they're not charging for any monies to attend. It's just, you know, it's just a really good event. Then no, we wouldn't charge a fee. I think that we've put in there events, the fee charges for friends groups, again, we wouldn't. It's just the consent fee, dependent on the level of event and what we need to do as an organisation, and it just safeguards ourselves. You know, if it's a fairly big event and it will take a lot of officer time, that, you know, for example, you know, checking risk assessments or whatever, then I do think it's just that safeguard to ensure that we can consider that in the realm, and that's really why it's there. So.
No, that's fine. I can see it from that point of view, because in my other world of Somerset Council, we have to do event management plans when Belvedere Park, as an example, okay. And that does take them time to make sure that they've got the licensing, and then it needs our open spaces team to go around and do all those different checks. So I guess the same would happen here, because you're trying to, again, protect your asset for wider users.
Exactly. If it's a small event, you know, which the friends group are doing, then, like, you know, I don't think any of us would have any issue with it. But sometimes if they get a bit bigger or they work with another organisation, I think we just need to have that safeguard there, that we've got that ability, if we want to, and through the approvals process, if senior management want to charge that fees or not, as the case may be.
I've got two other questions. One is around, actually, I was intrigued by the actual number of events that we've got listed of our parks being used over the past year, because I want to say that what I've seen on social media of some things that I could attend in some of our parks, of fitness classes and other things, don't quite match up with those higher figures for our parks.
No, I think the problem is the information we've got is from Lemon Bookings.
Yes. So
there are probably stuff going on in our parks that we may charge for, but we haven't got a specific record of it.
Okay.
So one of the officer who does manage it will be coming under me in the new year. So one of the things we will be doing, or what I want to do, is make sure that as much as on Lemon Bookings as we can do, we can put on, because then when we do report to you, we actually report to you with a wider picture. I would accept it's a narrow picture at the moment, and it's not a perfect picture, but we will endeavour to put more on, so that we've got, so for fitness classes, we know we're in a different position now, and we better understand how we're going to manage those sorts of activities, and so therefore there would be no issue, but I would hope say the hope that no issues of putting them on lemon bookings. It's just this is what's the information from lemon bookings. My apologies if the report wasn't right clear.
Oh no, it wasn't. That wasn't me thinking your report was wrong. It was actually where I think probably they're not telling us they're using our parks either.
Well, you know, at the end of the day, it's always a tricky one, isn't it? Because it's a public park. It's there for public amenity. You know, if somebody pops a zebra up in a little corner to have a birthday party, it is what it is. So, you know, and I think we, you know, there has to be a bit of give and take in that.
My final question is also just around the comms element. Do we have the link so that actually when people book our parks, if it's a public event, that actually we do some promotion around that event happening, so that we can kind of link in and say, actually, this is, we support what's going on here, or here, this is something that's going on in the area?
I think so, but that tends to fall under the events officer's role. But one of the things that I do want to do post the Christmas New Year period is sort of unpick some of this stuff as well, so that we've got a better understanding of who does what when, and of which comms and grants and all of those sort of issues which all sort of impact will come into. And then once we start reporting back again, then we can always bring that back and members can have a good understanding of how things work. And so that you know, we work on a more, you know, collaborative basis, and we can see that if X happens, then this is what will also happen.
And that's my questions done. I've got Caro first, and then I'll go to others.
Yeah, this is about the dear old consent fee, or rather not very dear old consent fee, which would be too dear, in fact. But I don't agree fundamentally. I think we had in our original policy, it was basically the case that if a friends group wanted to put on a lovely community event in the park, then we wouldn't charge them for it. Yes, we need to provide event management plans and all the rest of it, fine. But I think if you introduce a consent fee, it will be a massive disincentive. It's really hard to keep friends groups going, and there aren't a lot of really active ones that actually do stuff, and we need them. We really need them. They add so much value. They basically relieve the council of a lot of work through all the litter picking activities that you might do, you know, just general kind of like keeping an eye out for the park, reporting issues, making sure that everybody, you know, that communicating with the public about, you know, oh, that's all right, the swings are going to get fixed next week, whatever it is. They do an awful lot that isn't often seen as well as the sort of events and stuff. And obviously they operate on, you know, very limited budgets. I just think this would be a real disincentive, and I think, you know, we need to be doing everything we can to encourage friends groups to form, and B, for them, you know, to do lovely events. I mean, obviously as a volunteer I have been involved in such things, and the amount of voluntary effort that goes into them is huge, and the amount of clear up, the amount of prep, all sorts of things. And there's a lot of work even outside the events, as I've said, that goes into that people put in their free time for no money into the park. So I just think it doesn't sit well with me. Obviously we have officers whose job it is to check documents and whatnot. A friends group like Friends of French Weir have been doing, you know, this stuff for a while, know what they're doing, like quite seriously know what they're doing. And they probably leave the park in a better state than when, you know, when they found it. So it's not the need for it, I'm not seeing, and I'm really worried that it could prove a disincentive. There are some groups, you know, that they keep going, and you need a lot of motivation to do that, and I don't want anything thrown in the mix that would make them feel, do you know what, our efforts aren't valued, do you know what, let's just not bother, it's too much hassle. And, you know, this is, to them, this will be sort of saying, ha, we'll have 110 quid off you. The rationale isn't clear, and it would be, you know, I fear that it will really discourage them from organising events.
Paul?
Kind of very similar, but I won't put it as well or as long as Caroline did. But the same applies for the community centre and the Pride and Prizeville events. I don't wish to see, you know, anything that makes the efforts that they put in to deliver that, because they do have like bouncy castles and things which I think are face paint, which are charged for. But I'm just reading around the consent form. I just want to, you know, make sure that we don't put the community, the people that support the community off But I understand there's officers' time, but I think it's largely the same every year, I think.
Is there something to come in here, Angela, where you're saying it may be charged and it runs it, so maybe there is just a small wording on that bit for community events that we've changed from will be charged to may be charged
It is May.
on page.
It is May in the report.
Just say no.
Just say May.
Any event organised on behalf of that will be charged, but a consent fee may be charged. It's there, you know, as I've said earlier, it's there as a safeguard for the organisation.
That's mine that's on the website, because I'm on the website on page 90. Says a community event is where there is no money for entry and benefits to the resident of Taunton, although a consent fee will be charged.
I've got that as well.
Well, there must be a
Two places.
problem in there.
Oh, is it in two places? So I'm wondering whether if we make it May across both areas.
Yeah, under the induction, it says May.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's so good.
Because for me personally, I think we need to have it in there. If there's a difference between an event with, you know, 1,000 people attending and things that need a lot of an event management plan, and there's loads of other legislation that you have to follow, that does cause a lot of work. And I've seen that happen. And I know it's slightly different when it comes to like Live in Somerset and other big scale events that happen in Bivory, but that could happen in some of our parks if we want them to be used in even further ways. So I just think whether or not May then allows us that discretion. For me personally, I think it gives us the scope to do it. Bev, and then Nick, and then I'll come back to Carrie.
Thanks, Chair. How much, is there a set fee? Because I can't, there's no figures at all in it. How much would it be?
The consent fee, yes, it should be in the guidance document. It's not in the report, it's in the guidance document.
I didn't see it.
The guidance document, I'll find it now.
Oh, right, it's at the bottom.
Yeah, the guidance document sets down all the fees in as plainly as we can do.
Yeah, I mean,
basically, it's a combination of what was originally, it's under events, which was originally the permit fee and the admin fee. And what I've done is just combine them. So because at the end of the day, we've taken away the permit because obviously we're going to be issuing permits for street traders during the course of next year. So that's the reason why it's there.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd missed it. I have read it and completely missed it because it was the bottom. And absolutely, and you know, I understand completely what Councillor Ellis is saying, but also obviously it's got to be balanced. And it's good that we're going to change it to May because we can look at everything on each individual merit. But obviously we as a town council, because we look after those parks, we own those parks, you know, we have a duty and care also for everybody that uses those parks. It's as Councillor Smith-Roberts alluded to, you know, we've got the risks, we've got to make sure that we protect everybody. And, you know, we as a town council and parish council, we are subject to all those different levels of red tape and everything to keep people safe. So I think it's about that balance of making sure that we've got everything in place, but whilst realising that not all organisations.
And at the end of the day, each event that's organised by whatever group will be considered on its merits in its own individual circumstances. You know, we're trying to bring some transparency, but also safeguard the organisation at the whole. And I understand Councillor Ellis's point. At the end of the day, let's see how the next 6 to 9 months go. What comes through from a discretionary basis. We may well feel as a council that in actual fact that we take that May out. I don't know. But at the end of the day, at the moment, my responsibility is to generate income for this organisation beyond the precept. And that is, I'm just trying to make sure that we've got as many angles covered as possible.
Nick, you were next.
Thank you. I mean, actually, just following on from that, I mean, calling it a consent fee, it's almost like an admin fee, really, isn't it? And I can see why we need to charge it, because I mean, if a group come along and put on an event, and we don't check their public liability, we don't check their risk assessment, and something goes wrong, can the public come back to the council? And so at some point we probably do have to actually have some check, and that is going to take officer time. And so I think that should be So kind of an admin fee. It makes it more clearer. I was just looking at the list of charges for the parks. I'm very pleased to see that actually we have a differing pay structure for our parks now. I think it used to be a flat fee. I'm glad to see that's come through. I was going to just look at Staple Grove Rec is considered a neighbourhood park and attracts a fee of £203. Actual fact, I would say Staple Grove Rec, it's quite a small park. I'm not sure it's entirely worth £203. And I would also say the same for Greenway Rec, considering nobody can use it unless they have a resident parking permit. So it literally is only for local people. I don't see either of those parks as neighbourhood parks and worthy of attracting a fee of 203. I would rather see they were put into the local parks. Again, Staple Grove is a very small park. I really do not see it on the same level as Taunton Green or Flowerswood or Thorn. It's tiny. And the same with Greenway Rec. As I say, it can only be used by locals because of the parking issues around it. So that's my only comment. So I was hoping if we could
Did they
change
start
that.
the designation of what the play park improvement plan puts them as?
But I have been trying to challenge that through the Play Park Working Group because they're not, because they were designated neighbourhood park because of the easy access. But what the person, and I did point this out to them at the time, so what they hadn't noticed was that it's all resident parking. So you can't park anywhere near it if you're not a resident. So it really is only a local park.
Angela, can I check on that point that Nick's raised? Have those parks actually been hired yet?
Greenway Rec is not one that we've hired, and I don't think Staple Grove Rec is either.
It might be worth putting them down lower to see then if they get actually anyone.
And Staple Grove Park was hired actually last summer by the Scouts group, and I managed to negotiate that they only paid the admin fee. It wasn't down to be free, because it was Scouts. Because that's an also interesting thing actually, because and it's nice to see that actually if it's a local community group like the Scouts, I feel it's good that the local Scout group who literally operate next door to the park can use the park for free. But I'm aware, of course, that they do raise money. So I don't know. So that's why I'm quite happy with the admin fee. Yeah. So if we could just change Greenway Rec and Staple Grove, because they wouldn't be worth 203.
I'll be led by your good selves. As I said, the designations were through the accessibility review. So I'm whether or not members wish to change that, I'll be led by your good selves. So.
Yeah, I think we, as a working group on the play parts, I've wanted to challenge the designation of both of those. Certainly Greenway, because it's not accessible due to the parking, and Staple Grove is a very small park.
What I'll do is I'll go to other speakers. Sorry, Karen, I'm going to go to those that haven't spoken yet. Then if you want to ponder a recommendation, and then we'll come back to that, and then we'll put it in just so that we can put that in. But then we'll take that separately so you get agreement from us all to make that change, if we all agree. Well,
Thank you, Chair. Caroline, just a bit of, oh, sorry, I mentioned it.
No, it's fine.
Just have some clarity on the little bit different sort of angle on the football pitch hire, for example, senior pitch hire 16.25 an hour with that would be with the changing, but down a few lines lower there's miscellaneous facilities for hire. So if there was toilets at an event, would there be an extra charge for that on top of the?
Not that if the main changing facilities I think are through the pavilions, aren't they, Victoria? Yeah. So that's where I think it comes from. I think that if we've got, unfortunately, as I said, this sort of structure reflects a little bit of what we've sort of inherited, really. So as far as I'm aware, if they don't want the pavilion at all, then they don't pay. But if they do want the pavilion or they want separate facilities, then they have to pay separately.
There's another line on the miscellaneous, which is litter clearance following games. would that apply to, you know, a football game on a Sunday morning where they?
Yeah, it could be. It could be in the main, to be truthful. I don't think we've ever charged it because in the main they're fairly good and they'll pick their own rubbish up. So, you know, because they value the use of the pitch, but it's just there just in case. I think it's one of those situations where we don't have to have it if we don't want it, but you know, there are occasions when things happen and we end up sort of costing us money as an organisation.
So that could be a retrospective charge.
It would be a retrospective.
And that's, yeah, because otherwise a game of football there on Sunday morning is £65–70. You know, so it's quite, as it's charged per hour. Just some clarity for anybody outside listening or the YouTube playbacks. Just the clarity there. Thank you.
Yeah. What I'll do, Councillor Isaacs, is for the miscellaneous fees, what I might do is I might just put some text above the table, so it just gives a bit more clarity as to why we've got this particular box, and I think that might overcome some of the confusion if that would help matters.
I saw it like a menu, like you were adding on your starters and your side.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Just because all of our facilities don't have all of those things,
No.
you can then choose what you want to do. Caro, over to you.
Yeah, I note that there hasn't been any like consultation with different groups affected. I mean, certainly the Friends group, this was news to them. I think maybe in future we need to kind of reach out and just make sure that when we're doing this stuff that our stakeholders, and they're quite important ones, a range of different stakeholders are kind of on board with it. And I'm going to return back to the issue of the consent fee. I'm fine if it's may generally, but I think the Friends groups are different. Why? Because they help us look after the parks for nothing. So they give us more, you know, they give us so much and they are not compensated for that. And I think they feel at the moment in particular, I think they feel a bit undervalued. And so this is a bit of a sort of slap in the face for them. So I would urge us to actually just exempt them from the consent fee on the basis that, you know, if you set up a proper Friends group, you've got a constitution, you've got a management committee, you're active, that is a whole shebang, and we should just be so grateful to have those people because they do so much work for us. And if they are put off doing that and doing events, then there will be huge costs to us. So it's a false economy to think, oh, we can get a bit of extra income, because they'll just go, do you know what, we're not litter picking every night then. They'll just report it all to the council, stick it on Facebook. Look, what a messy park. Yeah, but that's not how they want to work.
I would slightly disagree with you, Caro. I think for me, it's around doing a may and having that discrepancy. I think we've got to sometimes strategically think around what we do in relation to our assets and just make sure that we have the ability to cover kind of all options. I think some of us, I'm not getting it completely unanimous clearly, is that the majority of cases, it's probably that admin fee or consent fee isn't going to be charged. But I do think we need to give autonomy to our officers to be able to make that discretion should they need it, dependent on the type of event that's happening. It's all well and good when you have one group that's being run well, but we've got 12 parks and a whole mixture of different options. And I'm not saying that other parks aren't run well and other Friends groups aren't run well, but it can take a change of one personnel for things to kind of go a little bit different. So I just think for us, it's around future proofing, and having them maybe allows us to make sure that we're doing our job at protecting assets and everything else in between. And I think that we can hopefully, if you're saying that they're not there now, we can continue to build on strong relationships that allows that to be kind of an organic, fluid thing that actually probably likely not to happen in majority of circumstances where we'll charge it. We just need that autonomy to be able to do so. Paul, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I kind of agree with both of you. I think I totally agree with whoever it is, whether it's a established Friends group. We must get every piece of, we must ensure that we're covered, they've got public liability every time, really, not just assume that it's still in place, because sure, a Friends group could have it 1 month and then they could let it lapse. So we do need to ensure all the paperwork is submitted. My problem is I can't, I'm thinking about Carswood again. I can't think of a better thing for an officer to do than to be doing that to facilitate that. I'm not sure why we would charge for that. That's what I can't get in my head. It would seem like BAU to an officer, you know? I don't know if that makes a bad one.
So I'm going to come back to Nick because he's got a little change that he wants to make. So you can propose that so we can build that into recommendations.
Well, I was just going to go that members agreed to redesignate Staple Grove Rec and Greenway Rec as local parks.
Is there any other parts anyone wants to do at that moment in time so we can bundle it all in, or is it just
For the fee charging structure?
so you're proposing that?
Yes.
I'm happy to second that. Is everyone happy to make those changes because we're ultimately moving them to a lower rate, so that does have a potential financial impact?
Can you just check what I said?
You said Greenway Rec and Staple Grove Rec to be moved from neighbourhood parks to local parks.
Excellent.
And so you're proposing, I'm seconding,
Well, let Ed.
Ed second, go on then. All those in favour of doing that change? Okay. We've then got the bit around the consent fee, admin fee, in relation to that going in. There is obviously a discussion around different points of view. I'm going to make a proposal that we have the consent fee to be put in as a paper red, but that it may be charged, and that actually that's the autonomy of the officers in communication with local ward members. So that doesn't give local ward members any ability to override it, but it allows them to be kept up to date with what's happening. Tom, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion. I wonder if we could also, I don't know what the committee thinks of this, put some wording in around town council will always endeavour not to charge a consent fee unless absolutely necessary. So it kind of flips the onus around to, we will try not to, but if we need to, we will. That might confuse things, but
Unless you want to add some wordings around free community events.
yeah, absolutely. E.g. those hosted by local friends groups. So we could call them out if we wanted to. I just think we would, if I'm hearing the committee, it might overcomplicate it. So you can.
You're then getting rid of the discretion of it to be able to be charged. I think I know what you're saying.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, Chair, but I think my concern is what I'm trying to avoid is a blanket policy, in the sense that you know, at the end of the day, let's be perfectly frank, fees and charges are an income for us as an organisation, and one of my jobs is to try and ensure that we maximise those income. Now, I hear exactly what Councillor Ellis has said, and I'm trying to safeguard the organisation so that we're in a situation where if we want to charge a fee, then we've got that ability to do so through the guidance. I think we've got discretions there, so we've got quite a good set of discretions available to the organisation that we can probably fit the majority of things in if we want to. So I would be hesitant to sort of start saying, endeavour this. Apologies, Councillor.
No, you can say.
I'm just concerned that what we end up with is a bit of a mismatch, which at the moment we've got quite a clear set, obviously understanding Councillor Ellis's concerns. I think we've got quite a clear set of discretions, but at the end of the day, what I have said is I think we need to review them if we do transparency through reporting, then members will see what we're doing from a discretionary point of view, and then if we're here this time next year, we can review them again and say, right, okay, we won't charge friends groups, we haven't charged them to date, well, let's put that in the policy as a clear policy decision and get your good selves to vote on it. But I think we need to have that safeguard at the moment, and then actually prove what happens over the next 6 to 8 months.
I think that for me is why I'm saying if you consult with the local ward members, they can at least be aware. They can also be a vessel of correspondence or communication between people. And I think also then it does allow, I guess, the ability. I think majority of the time we won't charge. It's just those times when ultimately, I know you're saying your role is to do maximise income. For me, I see that actually when it comes to things like this, covering our costs, and probably it's not actually ever going to cover our costs when we take into account the prepping areas and the admin, but it at least helps go towards all the stuff that rigmarole wise, because of normally red tape, not for our making, but for health and safety, rightly so, that we need to go through.
So I agree. My only, and I don't want to really prolong this because you can get to recommendations. I think people are paying the cost by paying their precepts, which are funding the members of staff whose job it is to check the documents. So that's the only challenge I have with it. I think people are paying, especially if it's a local community event. I think people are funding it just in a different way. I think it should be in here, and I think you make a very fair point that it should be May. I would agree with the local member being involved. I would also add in, I don't know if it's chair of this committee, but someone else, only because I'm thinking of an instance where either you can't get in touch with the ward member or you've got two ward members who disagree. So you might need someone else who's a third party to, because it doesn't really happen at the moment, but it might in the future. So you probably want ward members and or chair of finance and governance or something like that would be my only.
What I'll do is, prior to obviously this, one of the recommendations is to recommend this to full council, which I believe is the 20th of January. No, 13th January. Apologies. What I'll do is over the next day or so, if I come together with review that section, I'll come together with the words on the basis that it's okay with Donna and Gail, and we'll try and come up with a wording that seems to fit everybody in as much as I can do, to try and ease some of the clear tensions amongst members at the moment. But at the end of the day, you know, my overriding priority is to make sure I safeguard the organisation and the income that we raise through fees and charges. So, but I will see if I can come up with something that tries to bridge the divide, if you want to call it that. You're like bridge over the river Kwai.
We need to change the recommendation at section 1. Just because we're not recommending the full report, are we? We're going to say subject.
I would just add on there then to give delegated powers to the to myself to work with Angela on the wording, which will then be recommended to full council.
And can I be kept up to date? Do I present this to full council?
You do, yes.
Okay, Carrie.
Can we actually consult with friends groups between now and then?
Yeah, we've Marcus has got an email list. We can send things out. So yeah, it's not a problem.
So we've got the new recommendation at number 6 going in that we've voted on. I just want to check, has anyone got any other questions on the recommendations? I guess my only question is in relation to 2, which is the 5% increase. I have no issue with that this year, I think. It would be interesting to note why we don't do it at inflation but round up to the nearest 5 pence. I think that's how Somerset does the majority of its fees and charges, that it takes in, I think it's doing majority inflation unless it can do. But yeah, I'm just wondering if that's something maybe to look at next year. I'm not against the fees that we're charging. I just wonder.
Well, next year, actually, hopefully we'll have a better understanding of what actually the facilities cost us to maintain anyway. So, you know, there may well be some variations in the fees and charges that are bringing forward anyway, but we'll update members in September as to where we are from that perspective. So that we, you know, at the end of the day, the most important thing is we actually own this and we understand how much it costs to run these facilities.
And any questions on balloons from anyone? Because that's a change in the report. Okay. So what we'll do is recommendations on page 83 with the new edition at number 6. We'll take them on block. I'm happy to propose them. I need a seconder. Pardon?
What are the recommendations now?
So to agree, do you want me to read them out?
Yeah, because we
are doing them as written, one with the amendment that it goes to wording to be updated in consultation with the chief executive and the delegated authority to the chief executive in consultation with the chair of finance and governance to review the wording in relation to consent fees. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we don't know what that wording will end up being.
No, because it's been delegated authority to the chief executive, and then that's still got to go to full council. So we can still have a debate on full council. I wonder if we debate fees and charges more than we do the budget at full council, just as a point to note. But just we'll take that forward to full council, and then the rest of the recommendations are staying the same, apart from 6 is being added, which is changing the designation of Greenway Rec and Staplegrove Rec to neighbourhood parks, no, local parks, not neighbourhood parks, that way round. So I'm proposing, you're seconding, all those in favour with the recommendations as amended. Any of those against? Carry. Any abstentions? Did. Okay. We've still got a lot to go. So we have got the health and safety update on open actions. Right, who is bringing that one? Marcus, you're doing it in.
Yeah, sorry, Chair, you might have seen my email earlier today regarding the health and safety lead. Unfortunately, not able to be with us this evening. He has sent through a one-pager, and the positive news really is that all outstanding actions from last year's audit have been completed and closed down. Happy to take any questions if I can answer them. Obviously, I'll have to take them away, and John has offered to come to your January committee meeting if that would be of preference. So he says the next annual visit is erring, and there's a slight error there because we've just moved it today. Actually, it's the 27th because we're interviewing for the heads of headmasters rolling on maternity in January. With Nesta will be coming back in, and then that will be reported to the next but one finance governance in the March there. So happy to take any questions. Apologies. Thank you.
I need to apologise, Marcus. So if I'm understanding, everything's been closed off, done, dusted from the report. New one coming in January. That will come to March committee. I have no questions. Any other questions? No. Do I need to propose to note this?
Yeah, please.
I will propose to note this. Seconder, Bev, all those in favour? That's brilliant news that we've closed everything off. Ready for the next one?
Yeah.
Perfect. So we are going over to the grants policy and grants recommendation, and this is agenda item number 9. And who have I got? Angela, you're doing this one?
We're doing this one as well, yes, thank you, Chair. This is the grants and sponsorship policy to be effective from the 1st of April 26. It has been through the grants committee already. A couple of highlights, I think. Obviously, the report just set out in some detail what the amendments have been. Obviously, we've brought together the grants policy and the sponsorship policy into one policy. We have included within that policy as well the ward members initiative scheme. And as you'll see in the recommendations, that the recommendation is to amend the scheme of delegation so that grants now oversees that scheme. I suppose the other highlights for me are the change in the venue grants. As members will be aware, the venue grant overall budget has been reduced by 30,000 for 26-27 to from 120,000 to 90,000 to allow the 30,000 to go towards the Brewhouse SLA. Following a quite successful small workshop we had with members back in September, there was a general consensus feeling that in actual fact they wanted to try and make the most of the money, and so therefore the venue grant has reduced, so that instead of doing 3 venue grants under the 90, we now hopefully can do 6. I think that's probably about all really. Overall, I think, as I said, the report sets it all out, and I believe probably the grants committee had a relatively good discussion about it. So, but I'm happy to take any questions if needs be.
Questions, Karen?
I think it should just state in the report that well, what was agreed at grants. I think originally the proposal was to cap venue grants at £10,000. Thank God it got put up to 15. But it needs to be clear that that's, you know, we still have discretion if in exceptional circumstances or whatever to go higher than that. But actually, having thought about that, one issue I raised back at the grants committee was the position of an organisation such as the Museum of Somerset. And I thought, oh, maybe somebody's had a chat, maybe that is something that, you know, if they applied, maybe that would secure its future, that level 15k. In fact, it won't. And there's an email from Sam Asthill, who's the Chief Executive of Southwest Heritage Trust, and it's quite clear that in the next year or so that they're going to need similar amount if we want to really understand the genuine requirements of the Museum of Somerset and sustain the standards. And I think we need to remember this is our premier tourist attraction, the tourism. It's on TripAdvisor. It is the lead thing. It also plays a huge role, not just in culture and heritage and experiences for our residents, but also educationally. There's so many children who've been forced out of the state system. That's where they get their history from. That's where they could get loads of different experiences from. So it on so many levels it delivers so much, but I think it will take them time to obviously, once the Chew Valley Hoard is in situ and that redesign of the visitor centre has happened, that may later on create a different set of impetuses. And I know they're looking at all of that, but that I think for the next year I'd be very worried. And I actually think I might have to vote against this, because I think I'm at odds with what some other people consider the venue grant to be for. I think it's people have wanted to narrow it down to say, oh, just a quick project or capital, whereas I have a slightly broader view of it. So I just want people to be very mindful of the position, say, of the Museum of Somerset as a key venue in town, which provides, I mean, any money you throw at it, the return is enormous. It just is, in terms of jobs, in terms of businesses, in terms of benefits for residents. It's just huge. So I think I'm feeling a bit more uncomfortable, because I did check it out with the museum, and I wouldn't want to inadvertently, my interpretation of exceptional circumstances is probably going to be different to some other people's, and I wouldn't do anything knowingly to prejudice them getting the money they need, so that they don't have to start introducing fees for entry, or they don't have to consider closing an extra day. I wouldn't want to prejudice that. So I think I'm going to have to end up voting against it, because I genuinely have a different view on it, and my concerns would be quite large. I mean, hopefully that exceptional thing, people may interpret it the right way. I don't know, but I'm just very worried.
Rob?
Thank you, Chair. I would wholeheartedly agree with Councillor Ellis. I think most in the room had an email this morning from Sam expressing his concerns and what he'd like to discuss with us going forward to support. In his final paragraph, we would welcome the opportunity to further discuss how we continue working together to sustain the growth, or to grow the important cultural asset and the benefit of local people and visitors alike. So that sums it up very well. And I think it would be the exception that we should thoroughly support, especially with the Chew Valley Board coming in. They do need, and that will bring a lot of visitors into the town. So that's my point. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Interestingly, Caro and Rob have raised mine. I will caveat that I'm lead member for Heritage at Somerset Council, if that's a declaration of interest. So we oversee that relationship with Somerset Museum. However, I'm wondering if there's a way through this. I haven't got that in my head at the moment, because ultimately I think that we need to continue to support the museum, but is there a different arrangement that we can do with the museum that isn't through this policy? And I know we've just agreed on the budget, but I don't know whether there is a different SLA arrangement or something that we can consider, because I wouldn't want this policy change to prevent the wonderful work and support that they do around multiple different elements. Even their position within what I call the cultural quarter in Castle Green and everything. So this policy in and of itself, I'm supportive of, but I just worry about that impact on the Heritage Trust. I don't know, Angela, your views, or Donna, your views. Is there a way through this where we can come to some form of arrangement with the museum?
I think my view was just I'm just going to make sure you understand, obviously, this has come as a grants recommendation. So this policy has been scrutinised by the grants committee. They've gone through, I know that on that night there was obviously differences of views, and there was considerations that was taken into effect, which is how the final version has come here. So it's come here for you to adopt the policy based on the recommendation from the grants committee. Obviously, yes, there has been an email that's come in today, but should that be detracted now from actually adopting this policy that has been scrutinised by a committee previously? It's come over as a recommendation. I think, you know, that would have to be something that we could look at separately, but we have a policy in place for a reason.
What's the imperative of having to decide this today? Does it have to be done today, or can it go to March ready for April?
It's your committee, Gail, I
It could
suppose,
go
yeah.
to January.
That's a
ready for
January.
March, because there's a January finance and governance. But there's not another grant. Oh, there's a grants committee.
There's a grants committee on the day before, 19th.
And they're looking at venue grants at that time.
No, they're just a general grants committee. I think there is a venue grant come in. So we have got some budget, and I think there was about 4 to 5 grant applications. I'm not overly sure what the level of budget is, but that would be the last grants committee, general grants committee for 25-26 before we start the new round in 26-27.
For currently, this policy is to frame how we give grants next year, 26-27.
So we currently give 30 grand, potentially maximum, and that's what we've given to South West Heritage Trust this year. And we're currently saying if we follow this policy, they could apply for 15,000 next year. And is there any form of mechanism at present that would continue to allow us to support them outside of the 15 grand? Not at the moment.
No.
We'd have to come up with something else if we wanted to do something on a case basis, like the Chew Valley Board coming as an example.
The only thing, sorry, to throw a spanner in the works, I would also say that Kick It, who also had a £30,000 venue grant, have also come back with a narrative as well. So, you know, at the end of the day, if you set a precedent with one, you've got to avoid doing it. We either you know, accept the position that we've got £90,000. How we determine how we divide that up, whether we do it as 3 or 6 or whatever. But we also have to consider, if you're trying to do something different for the museum, there are other organisations who would expect the same thing.
True, though I would say they're very different, aren't they?
They are very different. They are very different. But
Yeah.
you know, if you're trying to work on a level playing field, then at the end of the day, they would have different arguments that would probably be as heartfelt probably as the museum for different reasons.
Have we given any money to the Chew Valley Board?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Bev and then Carrie.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think just go back to what Donna was saying, this has come from and been agreed by a committee, and it's come to us to, you know, for that ratification, because it's been done, it's gone through committee, and I think it's what I don't think at this stage we can allow recent email that's come in, because obviously I've seen it as well. Yes, it's important, but this has been agreed, and obviously, and as Angela's just said, there's going to be other organisations, as Kikik has just, as I say, I've seen that email as well, and it's about how we address those going forwards. But this has been obviously, it's been agreed by the CAT, and I think this is what we should be looking at this meeting, and how we address the other issues going forward in light of this decision, if that makes sense.
Right.
It's just to point out that before we had a notional ceiling for events grants of 30k, but actually when we awarded the venue grants used to be a ceiling of 30k. But we had people asking for varying amounts of money, quite like diverse amounts of money, and we ended up awarding very diverse amounts of money based on assessing their case, the whole balance of who needs support and what can we do. So that's great. So we didn't end up, I think it was only Brewhouse and Museum who got 30k, nobody else got 30k, and there was a varying number of amounts
No,
of money awarded.
I think.
Actually, last time, no, they got 20. They got 20. And so we didn't give everybody exactly most people didn't get exactly what they asked for, but at least we had the freedom if we wanted, if we thought we really do need to give one of them X amount, at least we had that flexibility. But I realised that actually I've got quite a different concept of it to some of my colleagues now. And I think I was assuming somebody must have had a chat with them, someone like the museum, and figured out, oh, it'll be fine. But no. So yeah, it's all about flexibility. It's not tying our hands. It's just giving the flexibility. The old ceiling gave you more flexibility, but it's up to you guys what whatever.
I feel like I need to be humoured for a second, if that's the right word, because I'm not saying I'm against doing this. I think we can find a way forward tonight. But if all we do is rubber stamp policies that go through other committees because they've debated it, then it's pointless them coming to this committee within reason, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, if we say that whatever committee's agreed it before it comes to us and we're here just to do it, then it's not valuing our time to be used on other things. Does that make sense? So I do think that if policies come to us as a committee, then we need to be able to either say no, it's got to go back and come back again, and not just accept that another committee's debated it. In my view, I think for me there is a way forward tonight. I think we take the museum out of it. I think we can have a discussion around that outside that based on other emails as well as other cultural venues. In principle, I'm supportive of what we've brought forward, and we can see what happens as we move forward and see what people come up with. So yeah, so I'm comfortable. I don't know if other people have other views. Paul, you haven't come in yet.
Sorry, that wasn't about this as such. It was something different.
Oh, I'd like your view on this though, just because we're all debating and in difference of opinions. Any thoughts? No. Oh, I put you on the spot there.
Yeah, sorry.
What?
Sadra.
I think it would be good if we could look at this and as we go through time, things come to light and other opinions come forward, and like I said, we get emails and different things. So I think we have to be flexible to change, and like Councillor Harris said, we don't want to tie our hands too much, so that we can't award different amounts to where they're needed and asked for and considered at the time. And most of us here were at the grants committee where we discussed it and it went through, but I think in light of other communications now, things are a little bit different light on things. But that's my view on that anyway, Chair. Thank you.
I also think there's a learning point for us. I think I've had to stop grants in my MPO chair role recently, and we wrote out to them in advance as we were about to change that policy to let them know. So I'm wondering if there's something around, if we were to ever do this again, that we just do that comms piece, because I'm not saying that they bake it into their budget expecting it year on year. Some do, some don't. But it might be just something to take on board if we're changing. So
We did do that.
we did do that. Okay. And this is okay. Interesting that we've got it later then. Bev.
Thank you. So yeah, it's just a couple of things that I just need to clarify in my head. So going back to Frederica's point, if something has come from a committee, do we have the power to change it as finance and governance? That's the first thing. So it does say draft. And the other thing, obviously, those decisions, I'm assuming, and I hate the word assume, were made in light of budget preparation for 26-27, when we're looking at venue grants, budgets, moving things around. So I mean, if we're thinking about being flexible about the amounts, does that affect the budget? Do we have to look at that again?
No, so we haven't changed our overall amount, have we? We've reduced 30k to James Brewhouse. All we've done here is saying that of that 90k, it's got to be split into 6, not into 3.
Okay, so it's about apportioning that particular amount of money differently.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So get up and then.
I was just about to say, that committee though, we did add in section 5.1 .4.1, which said in exceptional circumstances, the council may award a different figure, and that was the thing that was debated at the grants committee, and that's why the policy was changed, so that in certain circumstances, if the committee wanted to, once they were presented with an application, they could award above the 15,000. So there is that ability to do that if they want. And we do know that in the past, even though it was for 30, people did apply for bigger amounts.
Thoughts? Nick?
What's defined as an exceptional circumstance?
Wording.
Yeah.
It's hard because actually we haven't got the chair here, not that, you know, just to give that summary, though lots of people sit on this committee, don't they, that sit on that committee? Okay, well, we need to move forward because we have got other items on the agenda. I'm wondering, I'm happy to propose as is because it has got that exceptional wording in there. I think that if then things come to light, then that committee can work with or put something else forward to council should it need to, if things progress through the year. I personally prefer not having maximum and minimum boundaries on things, but I'm happy to go with where we are as are because of that exceptional wording. I'm going to propose, if anyone wants a second, or if not, we'll have to go round in houses to look at other recommendations.
Can I ask a question about the ward member thing that's part of this report? Sorry, just very quickly. It says in the report that every year, if the money's not spent, it goes into earmark reserve for that. So if next year we decide in the budget that we don't want it, that this report doesn't override the ability to budget or withdraw it from the budget.
So I'm going to propose we take this as read and move forward as it's printed, unless anyone wants to come up with any other recommendations. Or we can't timeline-wise send it back to grants to consider, can we?
They recommended it, and it was a unanimous decision.
Carry the Nick.
Yeah, the only reason I voted for that, sort of the best I could get on the night, was 15 and exceptional. But I think what I would do, what I genuinely think is the best thing to do, is to put the ceiling back up to 30, because that's not tying your hand, that's giving you the right kind of flexibility that you need. And it's not the case that we're going to go, you know, or we're going to do 6 lots of 15, or we don't know how many lots of what. It depends what the needs are out there. And we've got to be able to give ourselves the maximum freedom. And it's, as I said, because I realised over the last few weeks that my definition of exceptional and other people's are actually, so it's probably not great wording. We're radically different. That's why. So I would propose putting it back to 30. That doesn't mean to say we're going to be lobbing out, you know, X number of 30s, X number of whatever. It depends on what's in front of us in terms of the applications and what assessment we carefully make on the night. And it's going to be a whole random different number and whatever, I imagine.
I think the only it's an aside, but what I would say is that they have agreed that there would be a separate grants committee, particularly for venue grants, so that in actual fact, so that the debate can be had as a particular on a particular grant for the particular type of grant venue. So in actual fact, because it, you know, going on what's happened this year and probably in the past year, all the venue grants are made in April and probably decided in April. So the money, the budget will be spent April 26. So you know, at the end of the day, you know, that is a specific function. You know, you will have a specific grant for that, but whether or not you want to add anything else in, I don't know. But sorry, it's an aside, but I just think it's important that we remember that we will have a specific grant from the committee just for venue grant.
What might help you come up with a recommendation? But I need Donna and Gail to check this. I think we can pass the majority of the report apart from the venues grant. So could we put in a recommendation that sends this back to the January Grants Committee for discussion, to come back to Finance and Governance Committee in the January.
No, it's the next year.
But even if we had a verbal update from that committee to then make the recommendation, because ultimately what I'm thinking in my head is that if we could put in a report that every year for the next year, we have a venues grant meeting once a year that has the ability to spend that £90,000 based on the bids received by a set date, that they can then work on the parameters as that committee as to how that money is spent. Does that make sense what I'm trying to aim at?
Already written in here that we would only have one meeting a year anyway.
Yeah,
I
okay.
can't remember what.
Because really, I think some of us, and even those that sit on that committee, are of a differing view when that committee took place, when they sit here today, are of a differing view. And I think it's allowing those parameters for them to make a decision. We're not changing the amount that we're asking for council to give. We're still saying it's 90 grand. We're just saying that we want to give them the flexibility that it goes with maybe what is needed. Because I would hate for it to be that we only get 4 bids in, and that comes that they can only have 60 grand. And actually, if we could give them another 5 or 10 grand each, or maybe one that's asked for a bit more, that then we don't have the flexibility to do that.
Is that not where the exceptional circumstance comes in? Because it gives you that flexibility.
So we're saying the exceptional circumstances when we want it to be, not for them to have an exceptional circumstance, or it can be on both sides.
Both ways, work both ways.
I put 1.4.1.
Yeah, it's whether that's enough. I don't know, I just feel like we're going to cause bun fights between venues and have to argue when exceptional circumstances are. Who we give over 15,000 to compared to where we are today. I don't know. Ed.
I really think it's going to be so much easier if we just stick to the 15 for everyone. I know it's gonna disappoint some organisations, but I just think best thing to do is to keep it as a level playing field. Yeah, keep it as a 15.
How many venue grants have we given out this year, Angela?
We would have given out, I don't, off the top of my head, I don't know. I think we'd spent all the budget in April and we had some money come back, so we got another venue grant for consideration at the January committee. So off the top of my head, I couldn't answer that question fully.
6, but I can't, I could have a look.
Definitely no lower than 6, because there was a lot of different, really
I had
different
some 10s.
venues.
I had some 10s. Couple of 20s. 2/3,
Real mix.
I believe.
Nick?
Thank you. I was happy to go with what your suggestion was, that we send this back to grants and take it back up to 30,000, because I don't think 15,000 would go very far. It's an organisation as big as Somerset Museum, and I'm wondering what they could actually put on for 15,000, whereas 30,000 could actually put on a lot. So I think we should go back to 30,000 and keep the exceptional, because I think if you're going to ask for more than 30,000, there really has to be kind of an exceptional.
I think the original, when we debated this at the workshop, the original intention was to actually try and ensure that in actual fact it went beyond some of the usual players. So, you know, if a venue wanted a new boiler or they wanted a new kitchen, they had the ability to apply for that money. Now I accept what Councillor Hurst is saying, that they could have done that within the 30, but I think what the intention was to try and ensure that it had a wider spread. Because obviously, you know, sort of same players were applying, and that was the feedback that we were that Will and I were getting, was that they wanted it to have a wider spread, to have a bigger reach, and so therefore that was the original intention of trying to reduce it. Because then if you did reduce it to sort of like 10, and I know it's changed to 15, then obviously that you could impact 9 venues instead of 3 or whatever. But that was the original intention behind it, was that it had that, because, you know, there are, you know, for things, some of their stuff, there aren't necessarily grants out there either. So you know, so that was the intention behind it. It was, you know, it was laudable, because they were trying to increase. So, you know, for example, there was a number of organisations, so for example, like the Albemarle and other places that were mentioned in the discussions. And so that's why the figure was reduced, to try and, you know, give a better spread to the grant money that we had. And I think that's the overall premise in which the venue grant was reduced.
So in response to my point there, so I think actually reducing it might hinder some organisations from applying, because actually they need more than 50,000 in order to deliver what they wanted to do.
I've got Gail and then Bev.
It was just to say what we awarded last year. So we awarded 2 30s, rather than the current year, 2 30s, 2 20s and 2 10s. And that was all awarded at the first meeting in April.
Bev, come in a second.
Yeah, I'm not really, I won't take a lot of time. I was just looking at and going, just building up Angela was saying, I mean, at 5.1.6, it does say that venue grants should not be considered as a recurring source of funding. And also successive applications to venue grants must clearly demonstrate the steps to reduce independence on assistance from the council in the current and future years. So I think it's really important that whilst we can assist, you know, we can assist those organisations, but there also must be other ways of securing funding, not just from us, and making it a level, you know, making it a fairer process. As you say, that there may be some organisations that may not come forward to think, well, we have got a chance because we won't get considered. So I think there just has to be a little bit more of a transparency about that, you know, and of course, you know, the organisations that have approached us are important, absolutely, but we must remember that there are other organisations that equally might need our help as well. Thanks.
Is there a way that we can do some wording that defers this decision tonight? I think for me, there's lots of discussion in the room. I don't think we've quite got a clear picture. I think it's really interesting just around the democratic process, around then talking back to grants committee and the chair just to get their view. There's, I don't know, I guess I see the museum as on par with the brew house, if not, you know, in very different circumstances. It's a national player, the museum, and we've done something very different for the brew house. I think there's just something where I think scoping out to 15,000 for something that is the top key place in Taunton just feels slightly uncomfortable. It might be that they only want 15,000, but it's about that flexibility within our policy to allow it to happen. So, and I get the whole point that people aren't meant to be reliant on grants, but we then did an SLA with a theatre, so it's very interesting. Nick.
I mean, this is just going off topic a bit, because I've also noticed, like the wins, the conditions of awarding for the town twinning, because obviously that's moved now from community in place. And I was wondering whether any consultation was taken with the organisations about changing that, because obviously that's a change to how it's awarded, whether any consultation was taking place.
Not that I know of. I believe that the chair of the grants committee thought they all fitted best there.
I'd be quite happy to see this go back to grants in January.
Do some wording.
Could I just say what you could do as a committee is decide, recommend that you're going to defer this agenda item to be reviewed again in January. In the meantime, there could be a members briefing perhaps with the grants committee and the grants chair. As to whether or not it goes back on the agenda for the grants committee, or it's as it is.
I like that. I'm going to propose that. Nick's going to second. All those in favour of that? Anyone? Oh, that's unanimous. Perfect. Do we need to extend the meeting, or are we okay at the moment at 8 o'clock?
Oh, yeah, you've got 1 minute, so you need to extend.
Or 1 minute to do the last.
I'm good. I don't think I'm that good. Because we've still got a few more items. So I'm going to propose that is there some wording I need to read out? Or we need to propose for half an hour, is it?
Yeah, so so you're just agreeing to suspend the standing orders.
Okay.
To extend the meeting for an extra 30 minutes if you agree.
I'm going to propose to suspend the standing orders to extend for 30 minutes. Seconding. All those in favour? We've now got thank you, Angela, for your time, and sorry that that was a very long
That's okay.
debate.
That's okay. That's all right.
We will get there.
Evening, members.
We're going to move to number 10 on the agenda, which is tree maintenance and replacement for climate resilience policy, community in place recommendation.
You've got
Woohoo, Bev, over to you.
Don't expect great things. Yeah, so this is obviously this has come from our from Jordan, our climate officer, and Jordan sits under community in place. It's a bit of an odd thing. So obviously this almost relates to parks and open spaces, but obviously because Jordan sits under our committee, this is why it's come through community in place. It's a reasonably straightforward report to agree separate. Jordan's done a lot of work around this, and Jordan, as we know, she's very thorough. We're very we're very grateful to have her. Her input is amazing, and she spent a lot of work in this as well. And I think the report says it all. And it just say it's come through from community in place. So it's about the separating out of the tree maintenance policy, the tree development programme and grassland management strategy for parks, open spaces and play areas into two separate policies. To approve delegated authority to the head of operations and the climate and place officer to develop an updated tree strategy, building upon the current tree development programme running between 2026 and 2030. And to approve the climate and place officer to lead a Taunton's tree strategy steering group and the population of the tree strategy contents with invited expertise of the internal and external stakeholders to assist in the development of this strategy. And one of the things that did come out of this is when we had the tree planting that went on in lots of our parks. Not necessarily, there was a lot of not much thought about which trees are good in which parks and which trees are good to plant, because some trees can't survive. And I think it's about thinking about what trees are appropriate for those conditions, the soil conditions, and where they are, because I think quite a lot of the trees that were planted didn't survive because they weren't either native trees or trees that are appropriate for our climate. And I think Jordan's done a really good job at looking at all this to make sure that our trees, future trees that are planted in our parks, are actually native and those that are going to survive. And that's about all I'm going to say, because I think the report is quite good and it's very informative. And if you've got any questions, I will try and answer them, but don't hold out any hope. Thank you.
Any questions or comments on this?
No, I think it's a very, very thorough piece of work. There's a lot of thought gone into this, and we'll end up with a really strong, I don't know if I dare say, state-of-the-art sort of approach to managing our trees, because, you know, we're looking at covering all the bases, climate resilience, using really strong native species, like Bev said. And there was something, Nick, do you remember when we were discussing this? There was something you had an amendment. Did it get put in?
Yes.
Tweaky.
Just checking, and yes, it has.
Oh, great. Well, that's great. So we just had literally, it was one amendment that we sent it to Finance and Gov with. So if that's in there, I think it's happy days.
Yeah, it is. It's gone in.
And I believe even the list of tree work that will not be undertaken unless it poses a health and safety risk, which I think is better.
My only question was on the core membership of the strategy steering group, and whether actually how we keep the chair of community in place informed, because that's very officer led, so you might get so far down the line and actually, not that we are tree experts, but where it's something large, novel, contentious or something, that it goes too far. So I'm wondering if there is a place for the community in place chair to be kept up to date throughout that process, because I just worry things go too far down the road and then we end up needing it. That would be my only concern.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good recommendation. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? No. Let's go back. So I've got to scroll back up to the recommendations when I got to a certain point. So if we're happy, Bev, are you wishing to propose?
Yes,
this?
I'll propose this.
Yeah, and seconder, Nick, all those in favour? So you were at the room, weren't you? So we now go to our biodiversity policy. Are you doing this one, Bev?
So again, in common with the previous report, again, Jordan has spent a lot of time on this one as well. So we're being asked to review, adopt and implement the biodiversity policy as listed in the Green Flag management plans and the climate and ecological emergency plan. So again, this is heavily towards open spaces and also coming under the operations committee, and also just to note that potential contributions to the policy. So this policy has gone to the Somerset Council Biodiversity and Land Management Officer for comment on that particular policy. So that's just for members to note that it's currently out there for further things. And I think again it's just for members to note, and if there are any questions on it, just let me know and I'll see what I can do.
My only question is, how do we keep track of awaiting those Somerset Council comments? Will we get that circulated by email, or when are we expecting those to come back? Because ultimately we're adopting something while we're awaiting something. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I did question, yeah, because it's almost I don't think there's likely to be any issues, but I do take your point.
Donna?
Would you want to defer this policy for the till the
Yeah.
January meeting whilst you're waiting for those things to come in? So then you've got the full picture.
Yeah, it doesn't have any negative effect on deferring it, is it? Because we're working towards all of this anyhow. It's just where I guess good practice would be if we made a decision tonight and they say something completely strange, it's got to come back to us anyhow and make a decision. So we'd be better off wrapping it until,
I'd agree. I would agree with that. Thank you. Yeah.
So I'll propose a recommendation of deferring this until January's committee, awaiting Somerset Council's comments.
I've seconded it. Yeah.
Do we think we can just let Somerset Council know we've got a deadline so they work towards it?
Yeah, so we can
I
pass that
can
on to the
go.
climate and place officer to chase them up for that.
You're prepared seconding, Bev? All those in favour? Might not have needed just half an hour almost. Internal audit, over to you, Gail.
Thank you. Yes, this is the first interim internal audit report for 25-26, which members are asked to review. You can see from the report the scope. There are no recommendations raised at this stage.
A bit positive and exciting, isn't it?
It is, yes.
So, my point of view, just to explain to everyone, we get someone that comes in that looks into everything that we're doing, checks us out, and they come back and said, actually, we're running really well, which is the same as what we got last year as well. And then they come back ever so often to make sure that we're still doing everything the right way, in very simple terms.
Yeah, February and after the end of the financial year.
Okay. So really positive that they, as far as of that date that they come in, everything's looking perfect. Well, over to you. I thought you had a question, sorry.
No, I'd like to thank Gail for the robust work that she's done to make this report or audit the success it is. It's good as well that we don't have any petty cash issue, because that's a real nightmare in some organisation. So thank you, Gail, for all you've done, and good report.
Brilliant work. Any other questions?
Thank you, Gail.
So if we add in here as a point to note that the committee thanks our Chief Financial Officer and their team for their work that gives us the positive outcome that we're sitting today in relation to our audit report. We'll put that in the minute. So all those in favour? That's perfect. And final item on the agenda is over to Marcus, looking at the Robarton allotments.
Chair, and I just say at this point, as I missed the beginning of the meeting, I need to declare an interest in this one because I am a plot member. So I actually pay fees for this. So I believe I will remove myself from.
Good night.
Can I just go and join the public space and speak as a member of public? Bar humbug.
Thank you, Chair. So yeah, this report's for Robarton Allotments rent review. So the committee asked to consider the request of the association to, on this single occasion, waive the clause in their lease 4.2, which allows the council to cover arrears of interest from when it sets a new rent to the date of the rent review. The amount to be waived / written off is £1,000. I will draw your attention to obviously the rent review should have been done in March 2024, but in that year the council was still in the formative stages of sorting out the legal transfer of assets made under the reorganisation order, and this rent review was missed. But over the past year we have spent a lot of time going through each of the leases and creating a database with a clear understanding of our obligations, terms of the leases and rent reviews. So hopefully this shouldn't happen again. But the argument, and I've included the we handed the association a letter. We had a good positive meeting with them here at the Deane House, handed over a number of documents and constitution, complaints policy, etc. to help them as a develop and become sort of best practice. They've come back and said that if they get it asked, the backdated payment will be written off due to the change of town council and delay in getting that sorted. Obviously, it's around about £1,000 to be written off. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
I just want to understand. Can I check my understanding on this? So we have not been paid for some rental income that amounts to over £1,000, and that they're saying obviously that's a struggle for them to pay, so they want us to write it off. And we will review their rent next October, is that right? Or because I'm just concerned that if they haven't put up their rent over the increasing period, and I'm not saying if they haven't got the money, then write it off, but I'm just concerned that they're going to go for a bigger increase from the original time that we did increase it, or have I misunderstood?
Try and explain if I wasn't quite clear. So they have in their lease every 7 years, I believe, and it's reviewed, and then a new rent is worked out based on a formula in the lease. So that was supposed to have been done in March 2024, but in the lease it also says if the council sets the new rent later, which we had done, we wrote and handed the letters in this October, there's 18 months where they haven't been paying that higher fee from when they could. If we'd have set the new rent back from March 24 when we should have in the lease, then they would have known about that and been paying that. They're saying then I mean, it's in the lease that we can do this, to go back and then say you then owe us for that increased amount from March last year.
We haven't told them.
Oh, yeah, and that's fine. I thought, okay, so what do we need to do to stop this from happening again?
So I think, yeah, as I say, we've got a system in place now with a spreadsheet with every single allotment lease when the review is due. So hopefully, as I said, there's one due later this year for Turner's allotments in Staple Grove. We will be in good time to ensure that when the rent reviews are due, we're communicating with the associations at good time so they can prepare for these rent increases and not be in a position where the council is then faced with a position of using the leases and then going back and asking for that money, which is they rightly, and I can imagine it seems a bit unfair given the delay was due to the council and not the allotment association.
Just to pick up your example, the one that we've got due in October, would we expect to see that come to us here in, I don't know, I haven't got a meeting diary, but July, so that we do it in good time, a bit like council tax setting, where you do it in advance of making the decision, so they know from the October they've got to put up their fees to their users?
So I think in the report, it does say that you should try and give 12 months notice for increases of allotment rent increases when out of season, so outside of the growing season, so they have time to increase their fees. But it doesn't need to come back to this committee to operate a rent review. That's something we can do as officers in terms of using the operative clauses of the lease to increase their rents.
I'm sorry, I've got more questions. So are we behind time with that other allotment though? Then if they want to do it from October, if we've got to do it 12,
The growing season,
okay.
12 months.
Oh, I'm learning stuff tonight about outside growing seasons and growing seasons. Over to Ed.
Thank you. Yes. Come on. Yes. Is this now part of the change policy? I think we had in personnel committee or something. Or it's one of the committees we were talking about change policy. Going make sure
Projects,
right.
change controls.
Yes,
Yes.
Different.
Okay. And yeah, I'll just say I'd like to say we propose that we do waiver this.
we haven't billed them for it,
No.
so it will be agreeing to forego or waive that billing, and then we will bill them now next year. So we're not actually writing anything off because we haven't raised any bills as it happens.
Is there any others that we haven't raised any bills for?
No, we raise all the rest as we go along.
Okay. Just want to double check.
And we have been raising bill for Robotham, but we just hadn't been raising it at the increased amount. That's
Okay.
correct, isn't it?
Any other questions? Paul?
You mentioned a spreadsheet of the dates in. If I put something in a spreadsheet and work and save it off, is there an alert? You said a spread explicitly said it in the dates when we have to review us saved in a spreadsheet, but the spreadsheet won't alert us to that or the relevant officer to the date. Just wondering what other safeguards we have that we don't miss it again.
Okay, to come back. I don't think it's that jazzy. That's something we could potentially look at here with I think obviously we're building an assets service now with increased officers. So there's an assets officer, head of assets. So I'm hopeful that there's definitely a greater responsibility and onus around those allotment associations because they are at least out on an association sense that sometimes we are probably a bit outside out of mind, but I think there's a greater focus going forward.
Ed?
I know within Microsoft Office you can create flows so that when you make changes in for something, the software will automatically make changes to calendars and things like that.
Is the chair? Will it might be a good idea to inform all of our allotment associations that we have made an initial mistake in this one allotment, and not to set a precedent that anybody else can come back and say, look, we've not paid the rates or whatever it might be, just for clarity and disclosure to all the other allotments associations.
Donna?
I was just going to say it doesn't affect any of the other allotments.
So those we've been doing right all the time.
Yes,
This one that we,
this one
where we forgot.
we've been late putting their rental
Yeah.
increase up, and what we don't want to do is go back and charge them for the back
Okay.
pay. So we just want to build them as it is for now, and we're going to forego the payments increase.
Thank you.
I'm happy with that decision, so I'm happy to propose the recommendations. I think it was just more about that kind of fail-safe moving forward, but I'll propose it. And it's seconding. All those in favour? I think that's the last item on the agenda. We can now close the meeting at just
Good spread.
8:20.
Send them my way.
Sweet.